Hey everybody, this is JDGaming. Today I'll be profiling my new deck that I've temporarily dubbed the Floater Extra Special. Name suggestions are definitely welcome in the comments down below, but basically, just like usual, I'm going to go through my card choices, why some things are in the deck, why some things might not be, and then at the very end I'll do kind of what you're used to, the alphabetical divided by card type deck profile, and you can click King of the Pharolymphs right here. There's an annotation that will take you to that video or that portion of the video if you'd rather just see that portion. Otherwise, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. So our first step is to decide the cards that will be the core monster lineup. We're going to begin this deck by playing 3 copies of Madolche Magellane. When she's normal summoned, you can fetch any Madolche monster, including another copy of herself, and add it straight from your deck to your hand, kind of like a Stratos. And if she happens to be destroyed by her opponent's card and sent to the grave, she immediately gets shuffled back. So she's kind of like a 3-card gadget engine. From there, we're going to be running 3 copies of Traptrix Myrmilio. This thing was a star player in last year's metagame at competitive events. Basically, it's a 1600 attack insect that fetches a trap hole, or a normal trap that has hole in its name, adds it to your hand, and then if you special her in any way, you get to destroy an opponent's spell or trap, kind of like MST. Then, these you could see start off as kind of the floaters that start giving you free cards just off of playing them. It's a proactive way to get your game state furthered without relying on your opponent, so I feel like that was a good start, but it's still hard to do anything with just 2 monsters you normal summon. So, the third monster we're playing in this lineup is Heroic Challenger Assault Halberd. This is a brand new card from World Superstars, and basically what it does is you could special summon it to the field like a Cyber Dragon if your opponent has monsters but you don't. Then it does piercing damage with its lovely 1800 attack points, and if it damages your opponent in any way, you can fetch a heroic card from your deck to your hand. This can even search another copy of itself, so it's a 3-card self-searching engine, much like the Magellanes, and similar to the Myrmilios. All 3 of these then give you free pluses upon playing, essentially, and then the Halberd actually serves as glue to bring these two types of monsters together by allowing you to special them to the field first by going second, and allowing you to make that quick Xyz play once you've nabbed your free card. You can even attack with this thing, kill something, and then after you've searched Xyz after gaining 2 cards, which is a fairly powerful opening play here. Allows for a lot of versatility because we will be building a rank 4 toolbox to utilize with this. And to start that toolbox, we're actually running 2 copies of Kagetokage, which is a reptile that says you can't special it, or you can't normal it rather, excuse me. But if you normal summon a level 4 monster, you can special it. You can't synchro with it, but that's fine, we'll just use it for Xyz. If you run it with Magellane, you can use Magellane's effect, chain Kagetokage, and now you basically have what gadgets have done for ages. Fetch a free card while getting an Xyz on board. It's a great way to consolidate into King of the Pharolymphs, who can then fetch another Kagetokage and have another Magellane Kagetokage play for the following turn. With our core set of level 4 monsters in our deck, we could start building a rank 4 toolbox, but I felt that the monster lineup itself still had a few inconsistencies, and I just wanted to make sure the deck had enough plays if any of its attempts to do so were stopped. So, we're actually going to correct the problem of slight inconsistency by running 3 copies of Emergency Teleport. You probably know, if you've seen my channel at all by now, what this thing does, but it's a quick play spell that lets you fetch a level 3 or lower psychic type monster from your hand or deck, but it's banished if you don't use it during the end phase. So this thing you could use to fetch a variety of monsters. First off, we're going to play 1 Rizebel the Star Adjuster. He's a level 3 non-tuner, and when he's special summoned in any way, you could target any 1 face-up monster on the field and increase its level by up to 3 until the end of the turn. So you can just increase his level to 4, and you can see how Teleport all of a sudden becomes a rank 4 enabler with any of the other core monsters we've talked about. And essentially serves kind of like an instant fusion. We don't have Nodin quite yet, or Norden, so this I just felt was better than running the instant. Then, we're going to be running some tuner monsters to give the extra deck a bit of variety. This is just something I decided to do for the sake of my meta. You could choose to keep it as rank 4 if you'd like, depending on what works, but I just felt having some synchros really helps in my metagame. So we're going to start with 2 Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit, the new level 3 tuner that serves as a hand trap, destroying your opponent's cards that have activated their effects on the field. You could use a Psychic Jumper at level 2, which has the ability, if you now have any pair of these cards essentially, and a way to bring Jumper out, you can then creature swap one of your opponent's monsters of your choice during your turn. So taking tough to destroy monsters, whatever they might be in your metagame, is a great way to take your opponent by surprise. Sometimes you could just win by taking their ace monster if they have no way to get rid of it. So very interesting card here. And we have one Recover at level 1. Literally, it's just a level 1 tuner. I wouldn't recommend emptying your extra deck just to use its glow-up bulb-like ability, because it does cost 2,000 life, and it's just not as viable unless you're running like a handful of cards in your extra. But it's just there as a teleport target, and you can normal summon into this thing once you've established a level 4. So with those, we can go for a variety of Synchro monsters like Armades and Naturia Beast at level 5. So Armades is just a general great sweeper. It prevents your opponent from responding, so you can get through hand traps, battle traps, monster effects, whatever. It's a star player in my metagame, so I'm playing that. You could play Catastrophe or whatever you would like. Naturia Beast, of course, lets you negate spell cards by milling 2, so that's a great answer to things like Necros, anything that searches a lot with spells, you name it. Then we have Barkion at level 6, along with Blackwing Nothung the Moonlight, or the Starlight, my bad. The Barkion, you can see now the Naturia Beast and Barkion are gone through with these two Earth tuners. That's why we chose those in particular. Barkion rips through your opponent's back row, and it can be a surprising answer to your opponent's strategy if you're playing against something rogue, or you're just playing against a traditional back row loving strategy. Especially with artifacts now, for the most part, out of the picture, it does work very nicely once again, so it's a very powerful card. And then Nothing the Starlight's actually something that took me by surprise. It's a very generic Synchro monster, no specific materials, 24 meter. When you Synchro summon it, or special summon it in any way, you burn your opponent for 800, which is just like a cowboy. Then, if that happens, as part of the same effect resolution, you get to reduce an opponent's monster's attack by 800. Since that's in resolution, you're not targeting, so you can get around things like Leo. And the combined burn damage and the effect decreasing attack will mean you will do at least 1,600 extra attack if you crash with a 2,400 monster. So you can see how 1,600 plus extra damage can mean, sometimes game-ending scenarios if you can just fetch out that level 6. Very powerful card, and I've actually been using it above Yugioh in a lot of my decks that make 6s, simply because Yugioh is great. It has 28 attack, doesn't change or anything, doesn't rely on a monster effect, but it really depends on whether or not you can use that monster you steal with Yugioh. In this case, you're just getting over some problem cards. 24 is still a solid monster. I just feel that it's more versatile in the long run. Then for 7s, we're playing Arcanite Magician. This is very easy to bring up because all you have to do is have a Magellane as your spellcaster and then teleport into the Ogre, or you could just set Ogre. It might survive with its 1800. And then you can pop 2 cards to punish opponents who are either playing in a very sloppy manner or just need cards to stay on the field. For instance, Black Whirlwind is a prime target in my metagame. Then we have Black Rose Dragon. No more plants since Dionea was removed, with Lavalval Chain getting hit and no longer being able to stack her, but it's still a very good field wipe, similar to Arcanite Magician. Just blasts the entire field, and sometimes that's just what you need to punish your opponent and blow them out of the game. And finally, for 7s, we have a Clearwing Synchro Dragon. This thing protects itself and your other high-level monsters from monster effects that target of any high-level monster and any low-level monster or whatever that targets your high-level guys. So very powerful defensive option. It's just a great card to go into if you have no other particular play, especially concerning destroying your opponent's cards. And finally, we're playing the Mighty Trishula, because basically if you have a rank 4 set up and you can either normal or teleport into the Recover, you have a Trishula. And there are actually a lot of instances where I'll soul charge to make that Trishula. One quick note about Trishula. I've noticed some people have talked to me about how it's such a huge commitment to play 3 cards in a deck that doesn't replace all of its cards, right? Well, first of all, this deck does replace its cards, which is a good start, but you have to realize that Trishula has a powerful ability that gets rid of 3 of your opponent's cards, and because you're losing 3 and your opponent's losing 3 pretty much, you're consolidating into a card that will simplify the game. But because of how powerful Trishula's ability is, and how it's able to disrupt your opponent's setups and defenses, I feel that it's simplifying in your favor, and therefore most of the time worth having in your extra if you have any good shot at making it. And therefore, it is in this extra deck. With that, the core engine of our deck is pretty much done. Now it's time to boost the consistency that we found by playing cards that give us all these free cards. So the first thing is a pair of Yugioh. This thing was something I was a little reluctant to test at first, to be honest. It's got quite a pricey tag for a super rare, 10 bucks a piece. Basically, the idea that I approached it with was, if I have tuner monsters in my hand, it's not really a great scenario, you know. You have to normal those things to the field, or you just teleport and then you lost teleport from your hand and the tuner. Yugioh is a new card that lets you special summon himself right to the field during your battle phase. So now you can just normal your tuner, special your Yugioh during your battle phase, get a bonus 1,000 life, and now you can synchro summon in main phase too. Not always the most popular option, but it's still a very powerful consistency card that lets you get out of bad hands. It's better to sit on, any of the level 5 through 7 synchros than it is to sit on just a tuner monster. Yugioh also has that battle trap, the hand trap ability in the battle phase, which will let you bring out an additional monster to surprise attack your opponent, or just power up one of your guys. Like, it's sometimes very, very important to keep your Naturia Beast or your King of the Feral Imps alive for an additional turn to have its effect really capitalize on your opponent's weakness and their ability to not get over this card. So, very powerful, tricky new card that a lot of people aren't expecting. I'd say if I had to sum up Yugioh, it's not a card that's amazing in any one particular way, but it supports this deck's strategies in pretty much every aspect, so the sum of all that makes it a card that's worth playing to boost the deck's consistency. It's also a Fiend type monster, which means it's very viable. With this next card, we are running 3 Pot of Dichotomy. Now, hold on, before you dislike this video thinking 3 dichotomies, clog like heck, no, don't play them. Well, first, let's think about this. It lets you draw 3 if you have 3 different types in your grave and can shuffle them all back, and you're willing to give up a battle phase. So those are the 2 stipulations for using this card. And let's see if we can actually do that. Well, first of all, the different types in this deck, we already have 2 Fiends here. We have 5 Psychic Monsters, 3 Insects, 3 Warriors, 3 Spellcasters, and even 2 Reptiles, and that's just the main deck, and not any of the other tech we're going to run in our main and extra. So you throw in all the different types, you actually have like half of the entire repertoire of types represented in this deck. It's actually very easy to amass different types in your hand. And if you look at the types of play patterns we're going to have, we're going to want to Magellane Kagetakage into an Xyz monster. That sets up 2 or 3 types for Dichotomy right there. Things like Yugioh and Halberd that fix your hands by special summoning themselves to the field are all different types. So they actually do allow you to play Dichotomy very, very consistently. And more games than not, I was hoping I would draw a Dichotomy rather than hoping or wishing I didn't draw the ones I have. You're able to so consistently load the types to the grave that many games I was actually able to resolve multiples if I drew them. So it's never really a bad thing. And if you talk in terms of just raw probabilities, if you're going second, I'm just using second because that's, what it used to be for probabilities, and those are the numbers I have. Slightly less if you're going first, drawing 5 cards. But if you draw 6 cards, the chance of drawing 2 or more of these in your opening hand of 6 is a mere 5.4%, which is 1 in 20 duels. Like, that's not a bad situation. And again, even then, you're probably able to resolve all copies and basically have a Pot of Greed for the turn, which is amazing. Conversely, if you're playing 3 copies of this in your 6-card hand, you have a chance of hitting at least one of them 39% of the time, which is much greater than the 28% if I only played 2, or the 15% if I only ran 1. So you get a huge boost in the chance to use at least 1 early game, which you do want to see if you play 3, but the chance of double drawing them into those nightmare scenarios, which aren't even that bad in this strategy, isn't really a big threat. So I've been testing 3, and sure enough, it's been working so far. So if anyone would like to test this out, let me know how it's going. Please feel free to do so. So far, it's been working, so I honestly feel like 3 is the right call for this deck, both mathematically and through testing. It also gives you a lot of longevity for your plays, which makes it so you could play a little more aggressively with this deck, and that's what I really like about that card. On to consistency now. Kind of along the lines of Dichotomy providing longevity is 2 Lances. These let you protect your monsters either from battle or from spell and traps, so it makes sure your plays go off, and therefore it increases the consistency of your deck to performing how you basically draw. Of course, decks can be very consistent in a vacuum, but you may not have all of your cards go through if you're playing against an opponent. Lance kind of helps you in that scenario. Breakthrough skills, Fiendish Chains, compulses, whatever, won't work when you have this, and so you're able to make sure all your pluses go off as planned and hopefully overwhelm your opponent with the effects that we've tried to use. 2 marquee are going to be the start of our defensive options and kind of adding to the consistency as well. This thing, of course, lets you draw. It's very relevant in my metagame where we have Synchrons, we have Black Wings, just things like Plague Spreader, Zombie, and Malicious that, cue in that they're special summoning that turn. Very powerful card. It's an additional pair of insects, which with our Myrmilios adds up to 5. So we have quite a lot in that type, but not too much of a representation that dichotomy is going to get overloaded with insects or anything. So, very useful card. You can also send this thing to your grave in your standby phase the turn you want a dichotomy if you need that third type, so it's a very good card just for that. It's definitely a great default pick if you don't know what to play in your meta. You can take this out if you'd like, but I really do recommend you toy with a pair of them if they're decent in your meta and you're choosing to play the dichotomies. Alright, the time has come now to flesh out the rest of the main deck, so we're going to continue with our defensive cards by running these 2 trap holes. The one Trap Tricks Trap Hole Nightmare and the Bottomless Trap Hole. These, of course, are searchable by the Myrmilio. That's why we're playing the pair. And the reason I chose to play just one of each of these is because, well, Bottomless is limited, and Trap Tricks Trap Hole Nightmare, though powerful in getting rid of your opponent's Desperation extra deck plays, it's still something that I feel is a little bit situational, and I'd really rather have other back row that are more versatile for the rest of the deck. So we're just playing the pair to give us the versatility. Feel free to play more in the main, or even side some if you'd like. There are a variety of other trap holes, like Deep Dark Trap Hole, Void Trap Hole, maybe even Trap Hole if your opponent's playing something that normal summons a lot. Pick whichever flavor of Trap Hole you'd like, throw that into your main or side deck, depending on your metagame's needs. But I just chose these 2 because I felt they were the most versatile. Oh yeah, Time Space Trap Hole is also a good card. Hopefully that gets reprinted in the Megatins, right? So power traps here, we have Solemn Warning and Vanity's Emptiness. Solemn Warning, of course, doesn't need any introduction. Very powerful card, especially in a deck where you're playing tons of back row. It's not likely to be forced into activation. That's what I really like about Warning in a back row deck. You can use your other cards to take care of your lesser threats that your opponent throws at you, and then just nail them with Warning. Happens a lot more in this deck because of your ability to freely use other back row. And Vanity's Emptiness is actually a very powerful card, especially because your Xyz materials don't count as cards being sent from the field to the grave, so you can actually maintain some interesting locks with some of the extra deck cards that we will be choosing. Then we are going to be playing Book of Moon, Compulsory Evacuation Device, and Ring of Destruction, which I feel fall into a similar category of simple, chainable monster removal or at least disruption. So Book of Moon, of course, is very versatile, stops attacks, lets Effect Failure not work, a variety of uses there. But basically you can use it to stop one of your opponent's plays, just like Compulse gets rid of their monster, and Ring of Destruction is able to outright destroy the monster. Of course, all of them have different strengths and weaknesses, like Book of Moon and Compulse are kind of minuses. You're not getting rid of the card forever necessarily, but at the same time, they all have their own strengths, and I feel like having one of each of these, they're limited, so you have to play one of each, but I almost feel like even if they weren't limited, I'd start off by playing multiples of these just for the variety, and then decide whether I want more of one or less. So yeah, these are very good, just chainable outs to opponent's cards, and for the rest of the defenses, we're playing 3 Fiendish Chain. This is just my deck's choice. I don't want Effect Failure because I don't want to really deal with additional tuners in this deck. They do lead to a little bit of extra inconsistency, and I feel Fiendish Chain is good because the defensive aspect of it lets you push through with your Naturia Beast, or again, your King of the Feral Imps more, and that lets your deck do what it needs to more often and more times, gets you more mileage out of your cards. So Fiendish Chain is my choice. You could play Breakthrough Skill or something else and let me know how it goes. I just feel that that defensive option is very powerful. And the last 2 cards are Raigeki and Soul Charge for power cards. Raigeki is basically a staple in anything that wants to kill your opponent by attacking them. It's a decent removal card in general, and it's really powerful in a deck like this that's just able to keep throwing beater after beater that replaces itself because your opponent will easily get overwhelmed. Soul Charge will let you create those overwhelming scenarios if you actually have enough life and monsters set up, but it's also just useful for bringing little combo tricks into this deck. You can set up monsters for Trishula, for instance, the level 3 Ghost Ogre plus level 2 Maxi and any level 4 monster, voila, Trishula, get rid of 3 of your opponent's cards. Or you could just go, bring back Myrmilio, get its MST effect. There are a variety of uses for Soul Charge in this strategy, and so far I haven't found a reason to not run it in this particular build. And at last, it's time to finish out the rest of our extra deck by building our rank 4 toolbox, which will give us the bulk of our plays from our monsters. So, we're going to start off with a couple of removal tricks here. One number 101 Silent Honor Arc, and one Castel. Some people like playing multiples of Castel, or just the one Castel and no Honor Arc, but they do have their own strengths. Of course, Castel shuffles any monster on the field into the deck, or Honor Arc can just steal attack position, special summon monsters. Both very powerful depending on your meta. I chose the Honor Arc in my case because there are a lot of cards like Beals of the Diabolic Dragons, extra deck monsters that I don't want to send to my opponent's deck, where resources like Plague Sprayer, Zombie, and Malicious can immediately go back into summoning them. It's just a waste of an Xyz monster if I don't outright get rid of the threat. So, both of them, again, very powerful. Depends on which you would like to use, whichever you would like to use, depends on which types of cards you want to fight in your metagame, but I really do like the 1-in-1 for the variety. We next have Karen Gorgon. This is a card that lets you redirect any targeting effect to any other appropriate would-be target on the field, and with its 2450 attack, it's actually a great answer to the Monarchs in our metagame, so yes. But pretty much, this thing is a very interesting card for your side deck as well, because if you side in cards that are continuous and lock down your opponent's plays, think, Royal Decree, Gozen Match, Rivalry of Warlords, maybe Macrocosmos or Prohibition, whatever, Shadow Mirrors, Light Mirrors, whatever, they all get slain by MST, which this card can redirect to any of yours or maybe even your opponent's back row. It depends, of course, on what outs your opponent is playing, but a lot of times simple removal is the kind of thing your opponent will try to counterside to get rid of the things you're using to get a huge advantage, and Karen Gorgon prevents that. We mentioned Vanity's Emptiness earlier. This thing is actually an evil thing with Vanity's Emptiness because its materials don't count as things going to the grave, so it won't trigger the destruction of vanities, and at 2450, the ability to redirect destruction effects is such a good card at preventing your opponent from playing the game. Unfortunately, that is just a powerful thing that this deck has access to. I personally don't like Vanities as a card, but it is a necessary evil. I'm not going to play it just because, it's annoying. So, if you would like to run Vanities or any similar card, this serves kind of like a key beetle, I would say, for that purpose. Keep your cards alive so that you can go and take advantage of the opponent's weaknesses. We are then running one Dark Rebellion Xyz Dragon. At 2500, it's already your strongest Xyz monster, and then it gets half of your opponent's strongest monster's attack, whatever that might be. So you can then power through and do at least 2500 damage. That's game ending right there, but it keeps its attack, and sometimes you just want a simple beater to run over everything your opponent throws at you. Xyz monsters don't tend to have a ton of attack, so it's just a great option to have to counter your deck's inherent low attack point problem. Then, as a little tech, we're playing number 80, Rhapsody in Berserk. This thing's an interesting card that basically DD crows 2 of your opponent's cards in the graveyard. You can get rid of their breakthrough skills, their hard setup, Treeborn Frogs, or whatever you see in your metagame. And if you're playing against Necros, get rid of their mirror ritual spells, basically. Prevent them from utilizing their cards and getting extra effects. You can then equip it, kind of like Armory Arm, to any of your other monsters, so think powering up Karen Gorgon, your King of the Feral Imps, maybe Dark Rebellion needs more attack points. You just have an easy way of setting this up in this strategy because you can go for that second Xyz play off of that King of the Feral Imps with Kagetokage. Maybe your hand is just built to bring out more than one Xyz. You can bring this thing out, so it's a nice bonus. That's mainly the reason I chose it over Abyss Dweller. It's just a more useful card in a deck that can support multiple Xyz. In addition, I don't play against Burning Abyss all that much in my meta. It's just not as relevant a deck because the people I play with don't, really update all their cards all the time. So it's more useful in that I don't need to go, Abyss Dweller, Raigeki combo, great combo. I'm not bashing that. It's just that's not relevant in my metagame, and that's why I chose to play this card instead. But I would recommend a tech card in your extra that does deal with your opponent's graveyard, as graveyard hate just seems to be really effective nowadays, since macro and defissure have been gone for ages now. And in the last slot, we were playing this thing. This thing I'm really testing. I don't think I've ever really needed to bring it out, but it is fairly simple to bring out, so it's in there for testing. You can let me know how it works for you. But basically, F0 is a relatively new card that needs 2 Xyz monsters of the same rank, but they cannot be number monsters. So think, go King of the Feral Imps, and then bring out Castel to remove something. Now you can Xyz. So this thing has 0 attack and defense, but it can never be destroyed in battle as long as its effect is intact, and your opponent can't do any damage to you with this thing, or you can't do anything to your opponent with the 0 attack monster. So it will just sit there with its lovely 0 attack points, soaking up damage to 0 and being a wall for you. And then if he happens to attack an opponent's monster, you get to steal that monster until the end of the battle phase, which means now you can use your opponent's strongest monsters against them on an invincible body that can only be taken out pretty much with effects that negate card effects. So yes, Breakthrough, Skill, Fiendish Chain, Forbidden, Chalice, those things can be an out to Utopic Future, and it kind of does suck that you lost 2 Xyz. But again, the Xyz monsters are pretty much 1-for-1 plays in this deck anyway, and usually you could just rob one of your opponent's strongest monsters, maybe it's their only monster, swing for game right there, so that's the type of card this is. It also protects itself from destruction effects by detaching one of its materials, so your opponent will have a really big headache, even if you just throw this thing in defense and have no intention of attacking with it. It's a very interesting defensive option for this deck, and I encourage you guys to try it out and let me know how it goes. Whether or not you watch the profile in its entirety, I sincerely hope each and every one of you enjoyed this video. This deck is a really fun creation that I'm really proud of. It's really an amalgamation of a bunch of different tidbits, combos and things I've picked up from seeing other decks, as well as things that I've just come up on my own looking at these cards. And it's just really fun to build this type of thing. So I'm very glad with how it's working in my metagame, and let me know down in the comments down below if it's working for you guys if you decide to test it out, because I'm curious to see how it holds up in other metagames, slightly modified, of course. And speaking of the modifications, one quick note, if you didn't watch the rest of the video, I do have a lot of tech in here, and the main and side, or the extra rather, excuse me, that is tuned to my metagame. So I understand that not every card will work in yours. I invite you to just go and change whatever you would like and see how it works for you. This is basically a starting point. So we have 2 Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit, 3 Heroic Challenger Assault Halberd, 2 Jurigato, 2 Kagetakage, 3 Medolce Magellane, 2 Maxi, 1 Jumper, 1 Recover, 1 Rizebel the Star Adjuster, 3 Traptrix Myrmilio. And for the spells, we have Book of Moon, 3 Emergency Teleport, 2 Forbidden Lance, 3 Dichotomy, which I'm sure you guys are sick of hearing more about now. We have Raigeki and Soul Charge. And for traps, we have Bottomless, Compulse, 3 Fiendish Chains, a Ring of Destruction, Solemn Warning, Traptrix Triple Nightmare, and Vanity's Emptiness to finish our 40-card deck. For the extra, we have Armades and Naturia Beast at 5, we have Barkion and Nothong at 6, we have Arcanite Magician, Black Rose Dragon, and Clearwing Synchro Dragon at 7, we have the Mighty Trishula at 9, and then we have our rank 4 toolbox in Karen Gorgon, Castel, Dark Rebellion, King of the Feral Imps, number 80 Rhapsody and Berserk, number 101 Silent Honor Arc, and number F0 Utopic Future. So that's everything I have for you guys. Once again, I do invite you guys to test this thing out and let me know in the comments what you think of the deck, whether or not you try it out. And this is JD Gaming. Hope you guys enjoyed. I'll see you guys next time.